Good day everyone, JaceX here. In this video, we are going to talk about the PvP tier list after the recent update. So, for those who do not know, there's been a lot of buffs and nerfs that happened before the global launch, and there's been a lot of changes that affects not just the PvE, but also the PvP meta. But for now, let's talk about which character or characters who move up and who moves down into the tier list. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. First, let's talk about Messiah. From the name itself, he's a god in this game. Messiah is a very OP damage dealer. His ultimate skill can deal 360% AoE damage while ignoring the enemy passive effects and 70% of their defense, which makes him the best AoE nuker in the game. At the same time, he is too durable because he can gain an invincibility buff every time he casts his ultimate skill, which only has a 3-second cooldown. Messiah's second skill can also instantly burst down an enemy, because he can deal 300% damage, and additionally, the last hit of this skill's attack can deal damage equal to 100% of the target's lost HP, but it cannot exceed 350% of his attack. This skill is too broken, especially because his passive gives him an additional invincibility when he kills an enemy. Without a doubt, this character is one of the most picks in RTA. He is too hard to deal with, unless if the enemy team can outspeed your team and burst him down along with your characters with revive, or if they have Heinrich to block your buffs. But with LingLuo or Sania, he will be a troublesome opponent. Next is Heinrich. Heinrich is also one of the most picks in the game, because on the higher rank in RTA, every top player doesn't use just speed set, but they also use immunity set. They also use the bruiser meta with characters that give immunity buffs like LingLuo, but with the help of Heinrich's passive skill, he can dispel his opponent's immunity buff on the first turn. You just need to make sure that he will be the first one to attack before the enemies, so you can execute your combo with your speed nuker meta team properly. And with the help of his ultimate, he can block the enemies from getting another buff for 2 turns. It would easily break your enemy team's strategy because of that. And then in the next turn, after he casts his ultimate skill, his second skill can also inflict a wound debuff on the enemies, which will make them unable to receive any kind of healing for 2 turns. To make it short, if you build him properly, Heinrich is one of the best counters of the current meta on the higher rank. Next is LingLuo. She is also one of the most favorite picks in RTA. LingLuo is definitely the best healer in the game at the moment. She is one of the reasons why the bruiser team is the best meta right now. She doesn't just heal your allies with a huge amount of HP, but her ultimate can also give them an immunity buff for 1 turn. And with the help of her passive that was buffed with the recent update, every time she heals her allies, she now has a 75% chance to cleanse the debuffs from each and every one of them. If you want to counter the speed meta, you would want to build her with an immunity set and speed set. LingLuo and Heinrich are actually counter units to each other, but with the correct team synergy and team rotation, Heinrich is definitely the one who is winning. Although this is actually hard to achieve because you also need to have correct rotation and build on your team. Next is the crowd's favorite SSR unit, Tiamat. Tiamat is also a must-pick character in RTA. Even though her HP healing received and her HP recovery was nerfed after the recent update, she's still a top-tier character that can dominate in the RTA. And there's a reason why she is the crowd's favorite. With the correct build, she is still a broken unit. And in my opinion, if you met someone who picked her in PvP, then you should ban her if an enemy has at least 1 healer on their team. Or, you just have to ban the healer, because their heals is what makes Tiamat OP, but aside from that, she also has a very strong and very reliable skills. Tiamat's ultimate skill can apply a taunt debuff to the enemies. Her second skill can give shields to all allies and can heal them over time. While she's also able to deal a huge amount of AoE damage based on her HP, she also shares 25% of damage taken by other allies, which makes your team durable. She can also transform into an ultimate form after accumulating the damage she received and the heals that she received that is equal to 104% of her HP, which is too easy to achieve with the help of your healers and with the help of her skills that makes her sacrifice her own HP. After transforming, she can deal a huge amount of damage based on her HP, while also dealing true damage to the enemies. So if you want to maximize her max potential as a broken unit, then you should build her with an amber shell. She can surely survive and cast her ultimate with that shell. At the same time, when she transforms, she will instantly gain an extra turn, so the freeze effect from amber shell will instantly be dispelled. With amber shell and with a counterattack set module, she will surely survive and she can easily annihilate the enemy team with her AoE attacks. So make sure to team her up not just with a healer, but also with characters that can give her an immunity buff. Next is Lily, our Lolita god in this game. She is the most OP buffer in the game right now. Her second skill is what makes her broken. It can apply a 2-turn speed buff to all allies while having a 3 seconds cooldown. But what makes this skill OP is because of the twin trick buff, which makes the buff holder increase their turn meter by 30% when Lily takes an action. It can also increase the target's crit damage by 50% for 3 turns when you cast the skill while they already have the twin trick buff. Her normal attack has also a 50% chance to increase her turn meter by 20%, along with the ally with the lowest turn meter. At the same time, the ally with the twin trick buff has a 100% chance to cast a normal attack, which makes your damage dealer burst down the enemies as quickly as possible. And lastly, her ultimate skill has a 55% chance to extend the enemy's skill cooldown for 1 turn, while the ally with the twin trick buff will reset its cooldown. And I believe that it's too OP, right? That is why she is one of the most favorite picks in RTA. Next is going to be Hellkid. Hellkid is actually kinda underrated because he's not one of most picks in the higher rank in RTA, though some of the players still picks him at times. But I believe that he will soon become one of the priority picks because of the counterattack set, and because he makes his ally more durable with the help of his shield while having an immunity buff. But before that, let's talk about his skills. His ultimate skill can deal a decent AoE damage while giving your team a shield based on his attack. And this shield also gives an immunity buff on your team as long as their shield is still not broken. Then his second skill also deals another AoE damage while inflicting the enemies with an attack down debuff. And he can also add an additional shield on his own barrier based on the damage that he dealt on the enemies with his second skill, which makes him more durable. If this shield is still not broken, and he uses his normal attack on the enemy, there is a 100% chance to stun the attacker. So, with the help of counter set module, he can easily crowd control enemies, especially AoE damage dealers. It can also make him one of the most good damage dealers because he is hard to prioritize to target because of the counter-attack module set effect. Next is Borgne. Borgne is a simple unit to understand. You just need to build him with an attack percentage stats, speed stats, HP percentage stats, and effect resistance. All of his damage scales from both attack and his max HP. And the scaling is actually huge, especially now that he was buffed from the recent update. In my opinion, even without the buff, this character is still a very tanky and very brutal in PvP because of his passive skill. He's also a versatile character because he can be in any team. His ultimate skill has a very powerful AoE nuke damage that can instantly delete all enemies, so he can also be in a speed burst team while he's also a suitable pick in the current bruiser meta. Also, his ultimate skill only has a 3-second cooldown. The only problem with Borgne is he cannot crit and cannot do much without his ultimate skill. Next is Doki-Doki, also a must-pick character in RTA. Doki-Doki is a great unit, but many people use her in the wrong way. They use Doki-Doki with a speed burst team, but with her low base speed, she cannot compete with other units who have greater speed. Doki-Doki is actually best for longer battles. So if you want to use her, she's a must-pick character on a stall team or on a bruiser team. Her ultimate skill can boost her allies' turn meter consecutively while giving them a buff that increases their damage and speed. And this buff cannot be dispelled, which is a good counter for units that have dispel skills. She will also gain a buff that can purify at least 3 debuffs from her allies before they take an action. So if you want to maximize this skill, then you should build her with an alicorn shell. She should also be the first one to take an action before her teammates. In addition, this character is also a good synergy with damage dealers who will benefit with buff effects like Lian or Xiada. Next is Viper. This character is easily a must-pick character in RTA. This unit can reduce the enemy's crit damage by 30% with her passive skill, which is a great counter for a nuker team. But what makes this character a must-pick unit is her Serpent Fang buff and her ultimate skill. Her ultimate skill can inflict a speed down and attack down debuff on the enemies, which makes your whole team more durable. And at the same time, she can dispel 2 buffs on them, which is a great counter for immunity meta and the units who give shields. The effect of her Serpent Fang buff is that if the enemy crits, she will have a 60% chance to cast a counter attack on the unit who just attacked. And when she launches her normal attack, it will give her another Serpent buff that will accumulate until 4 stacks. It also has a 30% chance to silence the enemies. But remember that you can enhance the percentage of this effect by boosting your effect accuracy. Also, when she has 4 stacks, she will automatically cast her ultimate skill on her counterattack. So, if you build her with a counterattack module set, with speed set, and with a decent amount of effect accuracy stat, then she will be an unstoppable debuffer. Next up is Veronika. Veronika is actually a super great stall unit to have in RTA. She isn't popular yet, but I believe that this unit will become one of the meta characters, especially now that her ultimate skill was buffed during the recent update. But honestly, her second skill is what makes her a best unit. It gives her allies a great survivability, and at the same time, it deals a percentage of her max HP to the enemies. Her shield is one of the biggest shields in the game for now. It also has a super low cooldown because it only has a 3-second CD, and her passive skill can also increase her turn meter by 35% when she gets attacked by the enemy. With a turn meter set module and a speed set module, she can be a very OP character because she will continuously take an action that could help her spam her shield skill while dealing a decent amount of AoE damage. You would want to build her with an Alicorn shell so that she can dispel any kind of debuffs before she takes an action. Alicorn shell can help her to not get interrupted by speed down and control immunity debuffs. This unit is very OP if you build her right. But the problem with Veronika is that she is hard to play because you would also want her to get attacked by the enemies to maximize the potential of her turn meter boost. And the only thing that is good about her is her huge shield and her capability to steal all buffs from one enemy every 4 turns and spread it to all ally units. Though, she can still be an annoying unit as your opponent if you cannot break her shield right away and if her team also has an immunity buff. Next is Lilith. Lilith's skill damage is also based on HP just like Tiamat, but they have different playstyles. Lilith can be a powerful single-target nuker and a huge AoE damage dealer, while she can also apply a speed down debuff on all of her enemies. She was also buffed in the recent update, which makes her stronger, even though she's already a good unit. The great thing about Lilith is that her damage is based on her max HP and not just her current HP. And with her ultimate skill, she can instantly gain another turn after casting her ultimate skill. With that, she can easily kill one enemy unit in just 1 turn and make other enemies low in HP. If she's not able to kill her main target, she still has a 100% chance to stun that enemy and push back their turn meter by 100%, making them unable to move for another turn. With a correct target, it's like a 3 versus 4 when you use Lilith in PvP. Another good thing about her is that the attack down debuff doesn't affect her total damage, making her deal most damage possible compared to other damage dealers. Not to mention, she is a very durable unit too because of her HP. Next is Sania. Sania was a broken character to use in the RTA, but she was moved down in the tier list because of the recent update. But before that, let's talk about positive things about Sania. She is one of the most picked units because aside from having a few healers in the game, her ultimate skill can also revive a dead ally, although the skill cooldown will add by an additional 2 turns. But what makes her one of the best healers is because her heal can also cleanse 1 debuff from the target ally and can also increase the max HP of all allies by 40%, which is very OP, especially in the bruiser, meta, and HP-based damage dealers. Her heals are also based on her HP, which makes her durable enough to tank a big amount of damage. And because of that, the enemy player will get distracted by the fact that she can revive a unit that were targeted on their turn. And after you revive the unit that they burst down, the enemy skills are now in cooldown, while your units are now healed and revived, which makes Sania an annoying opponent. But there's a biggest issue right now. Sania was hugely nerfed in the previous update. The healing percentage is actually not what makes her move down in the tier list, but her passive. She's now unable to proc her passive skill when she's affected by a crowd control. She was too OP before because she was able to heal and cleanse a debuff even if she's not able to take an action. But I think that's a fair adjustment. But do you think that she's still the second best healer? Next is Rahu. Rahu is one of the units that was buffed after the recent update. Before his adjustment, he already had a great performance in both PvE and PvP. And right now, he became an even more greater unit. With the help of his damage scaling that is based on his defense, Rahu becomes a very sturdy unit. He can also deal a huge amount of damage while being able to transfer his allies' debuff to the enemy unit when he launches his assist attack. He can also buff his allies with a defense buff with his ultimate skill. Rahu can be a great sub-DPS support, especially on a team that is tanky and can do many actions in one battle turn. He is a very good unit in a bruiser team, especially if you equipped him with an artisan shell, because it can boost its owner's defense for 2 turns and can apply a huge amount of shield on himself and the ally with the lowest HP. I believe that you will see him more often in the higher rank in RTA. Next is Valerian. Valerian is a very underrated healer in the RTA. Even before the nerf of Sania, I think that she's still a great healer that you can use in PvP. With the tank meta and immunity meta right now, she is also well suited in these team compositions. This unit can be a very annoying healer because she can cast a 1-turn invincibility buff on a target ally every 3 turns. Aside from that, she can also heal all allies while giving them a shield that is based on her HP, while giving them a 2-turn basic buff with her ultimate skill. The only negative thing about her is that you need to have the correct speed and the correct rotation if you want to use her as your healer, but with the correct build and rotation, she is actually a broken unit. Not to mention, we have a very few healers in the game at the moment. Next is Chiaki. Chiaki is a great pick in the current meta in RTA, not because she has greater kits than the other characters, but because there are only few healers in the game at the moment and she is one of them. She is also just an SR unit, which makes her skills easy to upgrade. But do not underestimate her, because she can do well in PvP with her heals and with her buff that reduces damage taken by 35%. With bruiser teams, she's also a valuable pick, especially if the enemy team chooses a green element damage dealer. Just imagine if you chose her as your healer and you have a unit that can give shields to your allies, it would be harder for the opponent to break your shield because of the damage reduction. I believe that she works well with Hellkid for an additional immunity. You just have to make sure that before you choose this team synergy, the opponent will not pick a counter element damage dealer. Next is Mia. She was buffed recently, but the buff actually doesn't matter that much. Mia is also a very underrated character in the game. The only problem with Mia is that she is an SSR unit, and her skills will only be at best when her skills are maxed out. But in the late game, when people already have enough amount of perfect lattice, she will definitely become a useful unit. Her ultimate can reduce all of her allies' cooldown by 1 turn, can extend their buffs, and shorten the duration of their debuffs by another 1 turn. Imagine having an immunity buff or an invincibility buff on your unit. Then she can extend those buffs while she also reduces the cooldown of their skills. That alone makes her a broken unit in RTA. The enemy team cannot burst her down too because of the effect of her passive skill. And her second skill is also a useful skill because she can dispel at least 2 buffs on each enemy. With her normal attack, she can give an allied unit with the lowest HP a shield that is based on her max HP. With that, it will be harder for the enemy team to target a specific unit to annihilate in few turns. Next is Freya. Even though she was nerfed in the recent update, I think that the nerf adjustments doesn't affect her effectiveness that much. Freya is a great buffer-debuffer on your team. Also, her passive skill helps her allies to gain a turn meter each time they receive a buff. And she can also reduce the enemy's turn meter when they receive a debuff with a 70% chance, and it also ignores the enemy resistance of reducing turn meters, but it can only proc 3 times per turn. Her ultimate skill can give your ally members an attack buff for 2 turns, and she can also inflict a nightmare debuff on the enemies, which can help your team deal additional damage. At the same time, the attacker will be healed for 15% of the amount of their damage dealt, which is good for a meta-nuker team. While her second skill can give a defense buff to your allies, and a Dreamwave buff that helps your allies purify one incoming debuff. This skill can also be good for a bruiser meta team. If you want to use a speed burst team, then you wouldn't want to miss her out, especially now because Marvell was nerfed. So now, let's talk about the nerf guy, Marvell, one of the crowd's favorites during beta. Before, Marvell can easily manipulate the rotation of the turns because of his speed down debuff and with his turn meter reduction. But now that his ultimate skill cooldown has increased, he became a not so good option in PvE. So I doubt that people will still choose to upgrade this unit. But in terms of PvP, I think that he's still a good character to have. He has a 115 base speed, which is considerably a really competitive speed in RTA. And because he is an SR unit, it's easier to upgrade his skills. You can also add an additional speed when you upgrade his first skill. He can also reduce all of the enemy's effect resistance, which makes your team easily apply debuffs, apply crowd controls, and turn meter reduction. With him on your team, you are almost guaranteed to win in the lower to mid rank in PvP, especially if you have a really high speed. It is recommended to use him with units who have a really high damage output, or with cleanse and block. But in high rank, you will meet a lot of people who will use a bruiser team composition with a first turn immunity and heals, so you will easily get destroyed if you cannot burst down the enemy team on your first turn. The reason is, you cannot do anything when your best skills are in cooldown while the enemy team will just heal their units and slowly wipe out your team. Next one is Gray, the perfect husbando in this game. Some people say that Gray is only a sub DPS unit, but for me, he can actually deal a huge amount of AoE damage every 2 turns. Yup, you heard it right, every 2 turns, because his second skill will always gain an extra turn. And what makes him a great damage dealer is because he can also boost the crit rate of all allies and he can reduce the defense of his enemies every 2 turns. He can also boost his turn meter by 25% with his normal attack, so if you want to maximize his potential, you should build him with at least 50% crit rate. I believe that you can use him in both Speed Burst team and Hybrid team. Next is Kraken, the best crowd control unit in the RTA. The nerf he received actually doesn't affect his role that much. You can just add a little effect accuracy on him and he will be as good as before. With Kraken's ultimate skill, you can freeze all of the enemies and can reduce their turn meter by 40%, which is a huge pushback to each enemies. And even though he only has a decent percentage chance of applying those debuffs, you are still almost guaranteed to proc it by boosting his effect accuracy to 100%. With Kraken and Marvell, or Freya on your team, if they are the first one who can take action against the enemies, then you are guaranteed to continuously take your turns if your enemies do not have an immunity set and an immunity buff from their skills. This combo is actually popular in lower rank to mid rank in RTA and in normal arena. Next is Tsukiyo Mi. This unit is a great buff support that can boost your allies' attack and speed for 2 turns by using her ultimate skill. She is a good alternative if you do not have Lilith, but you should build her as your first unit to take action. But even though you can use her as a speed buffer, she can also be used as a cooldown reduction battery by setting her up with the lowest speed in your team. This strategy is excellent when you are using a tank meta. Moreover, the great thing about this unit is that her attacks are based on her defense, which makes her durable and a hard hitter at the same time. Her second skill could also reduce the cooldown of all allies while dealing a decent amount of AoE damage. And her first skill can also increase the turn meter of an ally with the highest attack. Next is Tsutomu. Tsutomu is a very underrated character in the game. He's a great unit in both PvP and PvE, but for now, let's talk about his performance in RTA. Tsutomu's passive skill can guarantee him to deal a crit damage if the enemy has a debuff. With the correct teammates, and with a huge crit damage, he can easily burst down a unit that at least have 1 debuff. His ultimate skill can also apply a wound status and block status on the targeted enemy. So if the enemy team doesn't have a cleanse, and if the enemy team only has one damage dealer, then you can easily counter the tank meta, Tiamat meta, or even the Messiah meta. I believe that this unit has a lot of potential to become one of the best characters or to become one of the most popular characters in both PvE and PvP. Next is Celince. Celince, a very underrated character in RTA. Celince is a very powerful shielder and she has a unique debuff that can make her opponent's passive effects ineffective while inflicting an attack down debuff. She also has a passive effect that can give 12% of her max HP to all allies every end of her turn if she can take an action. This shield can reflect 85% of damage that they receive from the shield to the attacker. This passive skill alone is a very broken ability, but what makes her difficult to use is her shield can only proc if she can take an action and is low compared to others, and her HP scaling is also too low. So if you want to use her, you should also use her by benefiting from her passive effect that can make her opponent's passive effects ineffective. Next is going to be the popular Chiaki. Chiaki The Echo is a downgraded version of Freya, but what makes her different from her is that Chiaki The Echo can make her allies immune to turn meter debuffs. She's a good alternative in the RTA if you do not have Freya, Lily, or Tsukiyo Mi, or if you do not have enough perfect lattice in the early game. Next is Beyontin. She is also a compatible unit in the tank meta and can be overwhelming against enemies who are also using the same strategy. But at the same time, she can also be used as a battery for the damage dealer in speed burst team composition. Because with the help of her second skill, she can instantly reduce the targeted ally's cooldown by 2 seconds and they will immediately start their turn. And also, with each stack of her ultimate skill, she can revive a dead unit. It can also boost the attack of all allies and their crit damage, but the downside of her kit is that the tank meta doesn't usually need these buffs. And you would want a support unit that can also give a speed buff and an immunity buff. And usually, revive will be useless if you cannot heal the unit immediately. She will only dominate if you can stack her ultimate and if the battle will last long enough. Next is Kloss. Kloss is also a great unit that can be used in RTA, especially if you are still using a speed burst team. Her skills increases the damage taken and reduces the damage dealt of the enemies. With the recent adjustments, she can now also apply a speed down debuff with her ultimate skill. And since she has a 118 base speed, she's the fastest unit at the moment. With Freya on her team, you are guaranteed to make the first turn rotation with your characters if you are having a competitive speed stats against the enemies. So if you are going for a speed burst team, you would want to build her with the highest speed possible. And because she can reduce the enemy team's defense, her role now is to amplify your team's damage while dealing a decent amount of AoE damage. I also believe that she's a good option in a bruiser team composition because of her debuffs. Next is Rilmocha. Even though she's only a popular speedrunner character on Doki-Doki Run, she can still be a good unit in RTA if you are going for a speed burst team. But because it is slowly fading in the meta in RTA, I do not think that she will be a good investment in the long run because she doesn't do much aside from dealing a huge damage. Not unless the game will have a balanced PvP. Also, even without her, you can still clear Nightmare Doki-Doki consistently, so I don't actually know if it is right to invest your upgrade materials on her. Next will be my favorite character in this game, Rosa. Rosa is still a great pick in RTA despite her being a squishy damage dealer. She's a buffer, debuffer, and a powerful nuker even if she was nerfed recently. She can apply a crit buff on all allies and a speed down debuff on the enemies. With the help of her passive, she can reduce an enemy turn meter and can deal a great amount of single target damage. But to potentially make her a great damage dealer, you should build her as fast as possible with another unit that can deal damage so that you can proc her passive skill without a problem. She's a great unit to have in speed burst meta and can also be a great support sub DPS in tank meta. Or can be the main damage of your team if you have Lily if you want her to be on a hybrid team. She's kinda hard to use in PvP, but with the correct speed and team synergy, she's still a very powerful unit. Next is Lian. Lian can actually deal an enormous damage, but to achieve her full potential, you need to synergize her with units who give buffs. With buffs, she can be as good as other nuke damage dealer or even greater than them. The only thing that makes her hard to use is because she's more of a team synergy. Unlike other characters who are individually good without the need of having another unit, and other meta characters can also be durable while being able to deal massive damage. Next is Xiada. She was buffed in the recent update even though she is already a powerful unit, but just like Lian, she also relies on buffs to achieve her full potential. Xiada can easily dominate the battle if you can give her 9 buffs as soon as possible. She can also be a great counter in the stall meta. But the hard thing about Xiada is, if the other players' team composition have a great damage dealers that can shatter her down in a few turns. On the other side, she can still become a great unit. Next is Dinah. Dinah is the best damage amplifier in the game. With the help of her ultimate skill, she can reduce the enemy's defense, increase their damage taken, and can inflict an erosion debuff to all enemies, which would help your damage dealer to instantly annihilate the enemies while gaining a little bit of turn meter. Next is number 41 Researcher. This character is a great alternative for battery characters. If you think you can outspeed the enemy, and if you think that you can instantly burst them, you can use her. And also, I think that she's also a better unit than Chiaki The Echo in terms of having a sustainable battle, because she can also heal an ally with her second skill and can also apply a wound debuff on one enemy with her normal attacks when you build her with an additional effect accuracy. But even having a great kit, I think that she cannot consistently compete with the current meta because she's a situational character. Next is Victor. Unfortunately, Victor was hardly nerfed during the recent update. Despite that, Victor is still a great unit overall. He is durable enough to sustain burst damage because of the damage reduction from his second skill. At the same time, he can also deal massive single target attack damage because of the damage boost that he has, while he recovers some of his HP from his normal attack when he have a 40% HP or below. The good thing about Victor is that he is individually strong because he can solo kill all of the enemies, especially if the enemy is not well built with their modules and shells, or if the enemy doesn't have a good team synergy. If you are going to use Victor, then you need to make sure that he will not die while sustaining damage with his low HP, because the lower the HP of Victor, the higher his attack damage. Next is Khloros. Khloros can also be a good character to counter the tank meta. If you can trap the enemy in the drafting phase, you can use him to counter the damage dealer by using his chain lock from his second skill. With the chain lock debuff, he can endure the damage of the enemy damage dealer. You just need to make sure that the enemy will only have one damage dealer after the banning phase. Also, if his ultimate skill kills the target, that unit cannot be revived for the rest of the battle. So, if you instantly burst the enemy damage dealer, then you are guaranteed to win the battle. But this kind of play will only happen once in a while. That is why I believe that he isn't a good option in PvP compared to other units. Next is Diting. We all know that Diting is one of the best single target damage dealers in the game right now. But the only problem with him is that he focuses on the enemy unit with the lowest HP. And because of that, you don't have an option to instantly burst the enemy unit that you want to target. But with that being said, he can still be a situational character when the enemy team isn't that synergized. Next is RC77. With his 118 base speed stat and with his debuff applications, he can also be a good synergy with Freya. His ultimate skill can stun a single enemy and can also apply an attack reduction debuff and a defense reduction debuff, while his second skill can push back the turn meter of a single enemy and can extend all their debuffs. But because it's a single target skill, it makes him hard to play and can only be a situational PvP character. He has a good starter kit, but I think that's the only thing that he can contribute with his team. Next are Kozami Kazuyo, Yang, Kazuyo the Reverie, Kachi the Guard, Dorothy the Wisher, and Rin. But I will not talk about these characters' skills, because even if they have a great potential of being a good unit, and even if they have at least one good skill on them, I still believe that they are just not enough to be competitive in the current meta. But maybe in the future, if a unit gets released that can actually synergize with one of them, then I believe they still have the potential of being a competitive unit. Next, we all know that these three units will be an easy opponent. Even if they have a great damage potential, I believe that these units aren't a great option to use in RTA. And lastly, we gotta talk about the damage overtime characters. These units are a popular team in PvE, but can they actually compete in PvP despite having an immunity meta? And can they actually win against a speed burst team composition? I do believe that these units can actually be in the meta. Why? Because you don't need to pick all of them in one team when you are competing in the RTA. What you should do is to make one of them an alternative damage dealer in the bruiser meta. And you should build them as a tank unit. I know it sounds funny, but if you would build them with attack damage, then they will just become an easy target for the opponent. But if you build them with a high HP, the enemy will have a hard time killing them, especially because you have a bruiser team composition. And the dot damage that they inflict are based on the enemy's HP and not on their attack. Also, even with immunity meta, you can just counter them by having a unit that can dispel their immunity. I know that this strategy sounds crazy, but I've played a lot of gacha games, and stall meta is always a thing when played properly. And that's it, guys. I hope that my video helped you decide which character you are going to use after the recent adjustments before the global launch. But I want you to remember that a tier list is just a matter of preference. The good thing about watching these kinds of videos is that you will learn another idea that you can improve with your strategy. And I hope that you learned something in my video. If you think that there are better strategies that you can share, please comment down below. See you on the next one. Peace.